Okay, so lately, it feels like everybody is talking about birth rates. Like economists are worried about the economy, and then like my relatives keep asking when I'm going to have kids. Have you noticed this too? We were doing a deep dive today about birth rates using the CBC article.
Mhm.
Did you know that last year, Canada hit a record low birth rate? It was only 1.26 children per woman.
Yeah, that's really low. That puts us in the same category as South Korea and Spain. Oh, and Italy and Japan, too.
Yeah.
They're all dealing with these super low birth rates, too. The U.S. is a bit higher at 1.62.
Wow, 1.26 is low. So I guess it makes sense that everybody is talking about it. But get this, there was this Angus Reid poll that found that Canadians are totally split about whether or not this is a crisis. Like almost half think it is and half don't.
It's interesting, right? It's not just about the numbers. It's also about personal choices and how our society is changing.
Totally. To go beyond just the statistics, this CBC article tells the stories of 3 different women in Canada. And they all have very different experiences when it comes to family size. The first woman is Andrea. She runs a Facebook group called Ladies Without Little Ones. It's for women who are choosing not to have kids. Andrea made a very deliberate choice not to have kids. But she said that it wasn't always an easy choice. She felt that pressure from society to be a mom.
Ah, yes, the pressure to conform.
Yeah. But Andrea decided to think differently about the idea that women who choose not to have kids are selfish. She actually sees her choice as an act of self-care.
That's interesting. I mean, more and more people are starting to question these old expectations, and they're focusing more on what makes them happy.
Exactly. Like, who decides what a happy and successful life looks like? Andrea decided that for her, it means taking care of herself
Hmm.
and focusing on her career goals and also just having the freedom to live life on her own terms.
It's a good point. And there are more and more people, not just women, who are starting to make their own paths in life.
For sure. Okay, so the next woman is Sheena. Sheena immigrated to Canada from the Philippines with her family. She has 1 son and has decided to not have more kids.
And Sheena's story brings up the money worries that a lot of families have, especially in Canada.
Totally. Sheena talks about how expensive it is to raise a kid here, like housing, childcare, all that stuff. It's so interesting because in the Philippines, it's totally normal to have a big family. But Sheena says that it's a totally different story, trying to raise kids in Canada.
That's a good point. You have to wonder how much of an influence culture has on family size and how that changes when people move to places where the economy is different.
Exactly. I mean, imagine trying to raise a family in Toronto or Vancouver. The cost of living is insane. And you know what else? Sheena thinks she had postpartum depression after her son was born, but she didn't really have anybody to help her.
That's tough. We don't talk enough about the mental health of parents,
Mhm.
especially moms.
I know. Okay, so the last woman is Alyssa. Alyssa's only 23, but she already has a 3-year-old son. She's not sure she wants to have more kids, and she's really struggling without much support.
Alyssa's story really makes you think. She feels super overwhelmed and isolated. Her parents had her when they were young, so they're busy with their own new families now.
Yeah, she's kind of stuck in between, and she has to do everything herself. She even said that social media makes it worse because it seems like everyone else is perfect.
I know what you mean. It's so easy to feel isolated even when you're online. It makes you wonder where the community support for parents went. Maybe the lack of support is a big reason why birth rates are declining.
Yeah, I think so. So after hearing these stories, it's pretty clear that it's not just about individual choice. There's a lot more going on, like economic stuff, societal expectations, mental health struggles, and lack of support.
Right. It's complicated.
Yes, very complicated.
If we really want to understand this trend, we can't just tell people to have more babies. We have to look deeper and try to fix the things that are causing these problems.
Okay, so what stood out to you the most from these stories so far? What do you think is the biggest factor?
Well, I think all of the things we talked about are connected, but the thing that really hits me is the lack of support for families. It makes me wonder if we could increase birth rates just by creating better support systems.
Something to think about. It's a great point. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to continue to explore the CBC article and talk about how bigger changes in society are impacting these decisions about having kids. Stay with us.
It's kind of crazy how each of those stories had that feeling of being alone. Like we have all this technology to connect us, but so many people still feel isolated, especially parents.
It's true. And this article talks about how these bigger changes in society are adding to that feeling of isolation and how that impacts decisions about having kids.
Yeah. For example, the article talks about how social media can actually make people feel worse, like you're not good enough, especially if you're a parent.
It's like Everyone else is living this perfect life. Perfect kids, perfect house, perfect everything. But when you're dealing with real-life parenting stuff, sleepless nights and kids who are having tantrums, it makes you feel like you're failing.
Yeah. Remember Alyssa, that young mom we talked about earlier? She felt a lot of pressure from social media to be the perfect mom, and it made her feel even more overwhelmed and alone.
It's like this competition, Who has the cutest kid or the best birthday party or whatever. It's exhausting.
I know.
And then on top of all that, it's just so expensive to raise a family in Canada now.
Oh.
This article said that it costs over $280,000 to raise one kid until they turn 18.
Wow.
I know. I knew it's expensive.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot. So I get why people are hesitant to have kids, especially when they're already struggling to pay rent and buy groceries.
Yeah. And then there's the cost of housing. It's basically impossible for young families to buy a house in a lot of Canadian cities,
Right.
even if both parents are working.
Exactly. It's like everything is so expensive and wages haven't really gone up, and it's hard to find good childcare. It makes you wonder how anyone can afford to start a family.
It's tough, but the article also talks about how the priorities of this generation are changing.
Oh, yeah. That part was really interesting. Like how people view success and happiness now is different than before.
Yeah. For older generations, having kids was just something you did. Like it was part of being an adult. But now people realize there are other ways to have a good life.
Totally. The article said that more and more women are choosing to focus on their careers or their education before having kids, or even instead of having kids.
I think that's a good thing. Women shouldn't feel like they have to follow these old expectations.
Yeah, they should be able to make their own choices.
Exactly.
Remember Andrea, she said that people are being more thoughtful about their decisions to have kids or not.
Yeah, she made a good point.
It's not just something you do because you're supposed to anymore.
Right.
People are really thinking about what it means to be a parent.
The financial stuff, the emotional stuff, everything.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like people are taking charge of their own lives,
They are.
which is awesome. But it also makes me think about what we were saying before about community support. If people are being more intentional about having kids, they're probably going to need more support too.
That's a great point. So what would it take to create a society where people actually feel supported, whether they have a big family, a small family, or no family at all?
That's a big question.
It is.
I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Me neither.
But this article does highlight some areas where we could improve, like affordable childcare.
Yes, absolutely. Childcare is way too expensive in Canada. The article mentioned that it can cost more than a mortgage payment in some places.
I know, it's crazy.
It's not affordable for most families.
And even if you can afford it, there aren't always enough spaces available. There are long waiting lists for childcare spots, which makes it hard for parents to go back to work.
Yeah. And then there's parental leave. Canada's parental leave policies are okay, but they could be better.
Okay, so what could be better?
Well, some people want longer leave periods, especially for dads, so that both parents can be more involved in the beginning.
That makes sense.
And it could help change those old-fashioned ideas about moms being the only ones who take care of babies.
Yeah.
Some experts also think that parents should be able to use their leave more flexibly, like maybe they could spread it out over a longer period or take it in smaller chunks.
That'd be helpful for a lot of families.
Right?
Like work schedules these days can be unpredictable.
For sure.
So we've talked about policy changes, but the article also says that we need a bigger cultural shift.
Yes.
Like we need to broaden our definition of what a family is
Yeah.
and be more accepting of different ways to raise kids. We're kind of stuck in this old-fashioned idea of a family. Mom, dad, 2 kids, a house with a white picket fence. But that's not the reality for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not.
We need to recognize that there are different types of families, like single parents, same-sex couples, blended families, multi-generational families, chosen families.
All kinds of families.
Exactly.
And they all deserve support.
I totally agree. It's about creating a society where everyone feels accepted, no matter what their family looks like.
Right.
And that includes people who decide not to have kids at all.
Yes, absolutely.
People should be able to make those choices without being judged. Like Andrea said, it's about deciding what a successful and happy life means to you.
Exactly.
So basically, we need to change how we think about families and being a parent.
Yeah, we do.
We need to get rid of those old ideas and create a society that is more supportive and understanding.
A society where everyone feels like they belong.
Exactly.
And maybe if we do that, we might see those birth rates go up a little bit.
Maybe.
But even if they don't, I think the most important thing is to create a world where families feel supported.
I agree. no matter how big or small they are.
Right.
These stories are so powerful, they show us what people are going through,
Yeah, it reminds us that there are real people behind those statistics.
and that we need to be more compassionate and understanding.
I agree.
Okay, I want to hear what the article says about solutions. What are some ideas that people have to address these declining birth rates? Okay, so we've talked about all the challenges families are facing, but what about solutions? Does this article offer any hope?
It does. It talks about some policies and cultural changes that could help, to create a more supportive environment for families.
Okay, let's hear about them.
One of the most common solutions is affordable childcare. The article mentions a few countries that have universal childcare programs, like Sweden and Denmark.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about those.
They've been really successful.
In what way?
Well, in those countries, childcare is seen as something everyone should have access to. It's not just a private expense.
I see.
So it doesn't matter how much money you make, you can still afford good childcare.
That sounds great. It would give parents, especially moms, a chance to work without worrying about childcare costs.
Exactly. And studies show that these programs actually help the economy grow.
Interesting.
It's a win-win.
Okay, so what else does the article suggest?
Well, another idea is to make parental leave policies better. Canada's policies are okay, but they could be more generous and flexible.
Like what kind of changes are people talking about?
Some people want longer leave periods for dads. That way, both parents can be more involved when the baby is first born.
That makes sense. It would also help to change those old ideas about dads not needing to help as much.
Right. Some experts also think that parents should be able to choose how they use their leave time. Like maybe they could take it in shorter periods throughout the year or spread it out over a longer period.
Oh, yeah. That would be helpful for a lot of families.
Yeah.
Especially since work schedules can be so crazy these days.
Exactly.
But the article also talks about the need for a bigger change, like a cultural change.
Yeah, it says we need to rethink what family means. We should be more open to different ways of raising kids.
Yeah. We're stuck in this old idea of a family being just a mom, dad, and 2 kids.
Right.
But that's not how it is for a lot of people.
It's not.
We need to accept all kinds of families.
Single parents, same-sex couples, blended families, multi-generational families, chosen families too.
Right. We need to support all of them and create a society where everyone feels accepted.
Absolutely. And that includes people who choose not to have kids.
I agree. People should be able to make that choice without being judged.
Right.
Like Andrea said, it's about defining what success means for yourself and making choices that fit your own life.
Exactly.
So we're really talking about changing how we view families altogether.
We are.
It's about creating a more supportive and understanding society where everyone feels like they belong.
And maybe then we'll see those birth rates change.
Maybe.
But even if they don't, the important thing is to create a world where everyone feels supported.
I agree. No matter what their family looks like.
Right.
This has been a really interesting deep dive. We've learned so much.
We have.
It's clear that this whole birth rate thing is a really complex issue. It's not just about numbers.
It's not.
It's about our values and how we support families.
And about giving people the freedom to make their own choices.
Exactly. So I think instead of worrying about the birth rate going down, we should focus on making the world a better place for families, a place where everyone feels supported, no matter what they decide about having kids.
I like that.
Me too. Thanks for listening to our deep dive. We'll see you next time.